From the last stylebender reclaiming his throne as the UFC middleweight champion, to the Boers' new entry into the middleweight division for good, here's the real reason why Israel Adesanya will destroy Khamzat Chimaev. As it stands right now, the last stylebender is sitting comfortably at the top of his division, and why wouldn't he? Especially after ending his nightmarish losing streak against his rival, Alex Pereira. In the last few years, it felt like Izzy was kind of going through a rough patch in his career. He lost his 20-fight win streak to Jan Blachowicz, and his reign as the middleweight champion since 2019 came to an end against Pereira, who had been haunting Adesanya's career since all the way back in 2016, in their kickboxing days. After losing the title, Izzy also lost to Alex 3 times in a row, so he was at the lowest point in his MMA career as a middleweight. Izzy is now once again the guy at the top, absolutely refusing to let go of his title, and no one's going to dispute that, because Adesanya has already defended his title from almost all the top rankers in his division. Now, after the cold and calculated Pereira knockout worthy of his highlight reel, it's safe to say that the last stylebender isn't going to take any big risks to prove himself in his current position for a while. Or at least, that's what it felt like, until rumors about the fight card for UFC 293 in Australia started doing the rounds. Now, to be fair, if I was in the UFC's shoes, I would genuinely be confused who I could put against Adesanya, because he's literally dominated the whole division, and fans won't get excited unless they get to see a truly worthy opponent get a shot at the title. Despite that, Dana White apparently has revealed a main event fighter for the event in Australia, and to everyone's surprise, it's the champion himself, Israel Adesanya. What? I mean, come on, let the man breathe for a bit. As of now, though, no one knows who Izzy is going to be fighting, but everyone's favorite UFC analyst, Uncle Chael, has speculated that it's going to be Khamzat Chimaev. It seems like a long shot, but he might be onto something. After all, Boers was almost definitely going to fight Paulo Costa, and that fight was mysteriously broken up. So technically, Chimaev is once again sitting without an opponent, completely free. Now honestly, if you ask me, with the hype behind Chimaev's seemingly unstoppable winning streak, and Izzy after his comeback, this match is a golden opportunity to fill the stadium to the brim with fans. Who else is Izzy going to fight for an exciting match? The only other possible person who can bring the same hype as Chimaev against Adesanya is a trilogy fight with Pereira, and Izzy already said that he doesn't plan on fighting Pereira again anytime soon. If the rumors are true, a fight between these two would be a match made in heaven. Well, at least for the fans, because Khamzat might be in a world of pain going up against the 2-time middleweight champion. I mean, a case can be made that Adesanya is one of the best strikers to ever grace the octagon. And Chimaev, on the other hand, had a rough time going up against Gilbert Burns' striking. No doubt Burns is a great fighter, but if Boers was outstruck by him, then Adesanya is going to be a major problem. I think it becomes even more evident how far apart the difference between Izzy and Boers is when you just compare their experience in combat sports. Stylebender has been fighting worldwide since 2010, with an insane record of around 80 fights in professional kickboxing and 26 fights in MMA. So the champ has over 100 professional fights in total under his belt. Meanwhile, Khamzat's career in combat sports, including his freestyle wrestling, only has a total of 39 matches. So in terms of fight experience, Chimaev isn't even half the fighter Izzy is. Let's not forget that Adesanya has defended his championship against top-ranking fighters time and time again, beating people like Anderson Silva, Kelvin Gastelum, and Robert Whittaker. But Khamzat has only fought low to mid-ranking fighters, with just a few exceptions. To be honest, Chimaev has no business trying to challenge the 2-time champion so early in a new division. The guy was getting a good shot at fighting an icon like Nate Diaz in his last fight, and even fumbled that by missing weight. However, he did prove himself strong in his catchweight fight against Kevin Holland, where he showed his ability to dominate strikers using only his wrestling. To be fair, it was a dominating performance by Boers, who absolutely manhandled Holland, winning by submission in the first round while absorbing no significant strikes throughout the match. Obviously, that is a huge achievement, but still, Kevin Holland is known to have a hard time against grapplers. I'm not saying that Adesanya has an amazing ground game, but he has fought against fighters with a wrestling background before, like Yoel Romero. I mean, even though it was an uneventful fight, for some reason, both fighters stayed on their feet the whole match. It's kind of obvious that Adesanya is going to have a disadvantage on wrestling, but the match didn't go there. It just goes to show how good his takedown defense is. Derek Brunson and Gastelum tried to take him down too, but Izzy has an excellent reflex for takedowns. Because of his kickboxing background, he usually ends up clinching with his opponents who try to grapple. And Adesanya is no stranger to clinches. His spatial awareness is off the charts because he uses the cage for support to avoid getting taken down. It isn't very apparent, but the style bender is way more well-rounded than people might think. After all, you don't become a champion twice with 5 title defenses if you have prominent cracks in your game. So I don't think Chimaev will be able to pull off another match without getting hurt, like he's managed before. Khamzat, however, believes otherwise, claiming he knows how to beat Adesanya and that he's never fought a guy like the wrestler before. In conversation with Henry Cejudo, who thought that Khamzat would do well against Izzy, Borz said that he doesn't understand why fighters like Robert Whittaker weren't able to finish him. He stated that Adesanya presents lots of opportunities for his back to be taken, and that if Khamzat ended up taking his back, then he'd take his head off his body. He's not wrong though, because Chimaev has demonstrated his strength in submissions before, and that's honestly his best chance to take out the champion. However, Adesanya has his best advantage in the striking game, so if any of his takedown defenses fail, that could probably mean the end of the match for him. In this fight, it kind of becomes a battle of two extremes between striking and grappling, both essential parts of MMA. Adesanya isn't ignorant of the danger Khamzat poses either. He says that he can recognize how good of a fighter Borz is, going as far as to say that he could even possibly take out some top-ranking middleweight fighters. But that's exactly the problem. He hasn't really fought enough people to show his skill and toughness. Adesanya isn't impressed, especially since almost all of Chimaev's fights up until now have been in the welterweight division. So him bragging about being able to take out the champion doesn't mean much until he's adapted his style to the new weight class. Speaking of weight classes, after Khamzat's last debacle with missing weight at UFC 279, his coach has expressed interest in him moving to the middleweight division for good. So technically Izzy is right. There's no way Khamzat should get to challenge the champion immediately after entering the division. He needs to work his way up the rankings first, because the wrestler has only fought 2 middleweight fights in the UFC. Adesanya, in conversation with Mike Tyson, stated that Khamzat needs to at least show him something special before he can accept a challenge, admitting that Borz might be a great welterweight, but he has no claim in the middleweight division. To be fair, Khamzat has nothing to lose in a fight against the champion, but Izzy can lose everything he's fought hard for if he loses to a low-rank fighter, especially just after winning the title back in his last fight. The trash talker that Khamzat naturally is, said that the UFC is protecting Adesanya, and they won't give him that fight even though the fans want it, because the UFC knows he'll beat Izzy. That's such a bold claim coming from someone who is nowhere close to a high rank. After all, Chimaev's threats are only being entertained because of the fans and the money he brings to his fights. So unless the UFC really decides to entertain the fans over maintaining a fair ranking system for its fighters, they shouldn't even be giving Khamzat the chance to fight Izzy in the first place. So, from the Borz's new entry into the middleweight division for good, to the last stylebender reclaiming his throne as the UFC middleweight champion, this was the real reason why Israel Adesanya would destroy Khamzat Chimaev.